Good morning,
Good morning to you.
Okay. We are 69b, and we started the Gemara yesterday. There was a debate, Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, that if you have a bird and you do malika on it and you find that it's a treifa, it has a fatal wound, so Rabbi Meir said it's not going to convey tumah, and Rabbi Yehuda said it is going to convey tumah. Rabbi Meir had a kal v'chomer from a nevela, a carcass, that an animal that is a treifa, that when you shecht it, it's going to not be a nevela anymore, even though it's a treifa. And that's very stringent because the Mishnah told us that an animal conveys tumah through touching and carrying. So for sure, a bird, which is less stringent, that only conveys tumah through the base abliya, through the throat, for sure, if that bird is found to be a treifa, it's not going to be considered a nevela, and it will not cause impurity. Now, Rabbi Meir made a jump that he applied slaughtering a bird. He said even malika by a bird. On that, the Gemara asked what happened to the rule of dayo. Every time you have a kal v'chomer, where you're going to learn things out, that if you have a stringency in one area and it has a leniency, for sure the more lenient case should have a leniency as well. So there's a rule called dayo that it's limited. You can't learn more out than your teacher. You're limited to the rules of where you came from. So to that, the Gemara asked, does Rabbi Meir not agree to dayo? Not for sure. So, okay, thank you. So to that, the Gemara asked, does Rabbi Meir not agree to the principle of dayo? We have by Miriam, when she spoke disparagingly about Moshe, Hashem said, if your father would spit in front of you out of disdain, you'd be embarrassed for at least 7 days. How much more so if Hashem is giving you rebuke? It should be 14 days of quarantine to that, but it was only 7 days because of dayo. Since you're comparing the disdain of a human being and applying it to Hashem, so therefore you're limited by where you came from by 7 days. Fine. So that's where we're up to. So Amar Rabbi Yossi, basically Rav Meir needs now a new place. You may. Today's learning will be dedicated in honor of my great father-in-law, great grandfather-in-law, Mordechai Ben Dov. Someone should have an aliyah. Okay, good. So with that we begin. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Avin, Rav Meir, Kra Eshkach V'Darish. Rav Meir, who learns once again that if you do malika on a bird and it's found to be a treifa, it means it has a fatal wound, it is not going to be a nevela. The words we have to know today are malika, treifa, and nevela. So Rav Meir says, I found a verse. What's the verse? Zos Torah's habehema v'ha'of. The Torah compares a behema to an oaf, an animal, a domestic animal, to a bird. In what way is a domesticated animal similar to a bird? The oaf behema, and a bird to an animal. Behema is matama bago masa. An animal conveys tumah through touching and carrying. An oaf, a bird, does not contaminate through touching and carrying. Oaf, a bird that's a carcass. If you were to eat that bird, now your clothing become impure. If you eat the carcass of an animal, your clothing don't become tameh. So in what way is a bird and a domesticated animal comparable to each other that the Torah compares them in the middle of Sefer Vayikra? It's to teach you that just like an animal is something which once you shecht it, you're allowed to eat it. And we know, we'll find out, mitahir treifasa mitumasa. If you find out it's a treifa, it has a fatal wound, but you slaughtered it, it's no longer going to convey impurity, mitumasa. So to a bird, af of davar, shemakshiro ba'achila, something which is fit for eating now, mitahir treifasa mitumasa. So too, if it's found to be a treifa, it's not going to convey impurity, it'll be pure. Now, Rashi points out, of course, we're going to apply this verse to teach you about malika. Why? Because the actual source that a bird, a regular bird, not a sacrificial bird, a regular bird, that if you slaughter it and it's found to be a treifa, has a fatal wound, that it's not going to be impure, that's the kal v'chomer in the Mishnah. Everyone agrees to that. That's a simple kal v'chomer. An animal which is so strict has a leniency that if you slaughter it, it's not going to be impure. So to a bird. For that, you don't need a pasuk. What's the pasuk coming to teach you? It's coming to teach you by malika that malika will come, and if you do malika on a sacrificial bird and it's found to have a fatal wound, it's going to be compared to an animal that if you slaughter it properly, or in this case you do malika on it, which is it's proper slaughtering, that it's going to not convey impurity. It'll be tahor. That is the pasuk that Rav Meir found, and the rest is going to be just attacking Rabbi Yehuda for a very long time. So now, Rabbi Meir has a verse. So what's Rabbi Yehuda going to do? He is going to have another verse or refute his verse. We have a verse comparing a behemoth and oath. So how is Rabbi Yehuda going to address this? Rabbi Yehuda, my timer. Now the question's back on you, Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason that you do not agree to Rav Meir that if you do malika on a sacrificial bird and it's found to be a treifa, it will not convey tumah. It will not be impure. My timer. So Rabbi Yehuda, the kadarish. Rabbi Yehuda also found a verse, and he's going to expound it as follows. Now it's going to get confusing with all the verses, so stay strong. So it says, the lesson is learned. This year, Sefer Vayikra, we're going to have to learn it with carefully, because these are all more foreign to us than the voracious. Okay, it says in the 17th chapter of Vayikra, it says anybody who eats nevela utrefa. If you eat a nevela or a treifa, you got to wash your clothing, you got to toivel in the mikvah, you're going to be impure. So nevela vitreifa, we're comparing a carcass to a treifa, to an animal that dies of a fatal wound. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, treifa lama nemra. I don't understand. What is the necessity of mentioning the word treifa? Let's plug in our calculator. Im treifa chaya. If the treifa, so I think he's referring to, there's two opinions if a treifa, there's two opinions if a treifa could live. And as long as it's alive, it's considered alive. Another opinion holds that a treifa is going to die, and therefore, even though it's alive, it's considered dead. Those are two opinions. So, says the Gemara, im treifa chaya, if a treifa could survive, so then harei nevela amura. If a treifa could survive, once it dies, it's considered a nevela. Im treifa eina chaya, if a treifa cannot survive. So now the simple understanding of Rashi sounds like even when it's alive, it's considered a nevela. Right away, as soon as you find out, let's say its brain has a big hole in it, so from that point it's considered a nevela. But I think people take issue with that. I think Tosfos takes issue with that. That can't be. It's alive. So they give an answer. Where is it? They give an It's a potential of that thing. Right. A living animal can't convey tumah. Right. That's this whole Tosfos over here. Can a living animal convey tumah? So what it means to say is, so Tosfos brings a pshat at the end from, at the very end, that basically, if the animal's alive, but you take a piece of the animal off, it'll now have a status in the Veda. You cut a piece off of the living treifa, which is considered dead. How is it considered dead? So Rashi seems to imply it's right now considered an Avela, even though it's alive. Those are the words of Rashi. But that can be difficult to understand. Either you go with Rashi and it's a big novelty, or you say you take a piece off the animal, even while it's alive, a small little piece, that will be considered an Avela. Someone else did it. Someone else did it. You did it. Your friend did it. Whatever it is. You consumed. You're right. That's right. It's before Yom Kippur, not after Yom Kippur. Before Yom Kippur, you had to find something to do tshuva for. That's how you did this. Okay. Ella. So why is the word treifa in the verse? Ella lahavi treifa sheshachta. It must be referring to a treifa, so animal with a fatal wound, sheshachta, which you slaughtered, shemetama. It must be telling you that a treifa that is slaughtered is going to convey tumah. So now, as it's about to get tricky, is that Rabbi Yehuda took the word treifa in the same verse as a nevela, pointed out that treifa is basically superfluous because nevela will cover all grounds. It must be coming to teach you the halacha he learns in the Mishnah that when you slaughter it, that when you no, let's see. Okay, good. So that's that a treifa that's slaughtered is going to be if you slaughter it properly, it's not going to convey tumah. Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, good. So Rabbi Yehuda agrees that a treifa that's slaughtered, it'll still convey tumah, and that's why you need the word treifa. So an animal that if it would die on its own would be a nevela. If you were to slaughter it now, though, and you found it has a fatal wound, it would contaminate. It will contaminate. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Fine. So now, Amar Le Rav Shizvi Elameato, and it's going to be a little bit of a long question. If this is true that that's what treifa is being used for, let's apply the same logic in another verse. Now, the other verse is in the 7th chapter of Vayikra, and it says basically that chaylev, the forbidden fats of a nevela, and the forbidden fats, meaning chaylev is the fats of a nevela, and the fats of a treifa, you could do whatever you want with it, meaning it does not convey impurity. You can't eat it. It says exclusively achal lo yisaychluhu. However, even though forbidden fats chaylev of other animals, of these animals, a chaylev of a nevela, fats of an animal, that's either a carcass or a treifa, is not going to convey tumah. So now, Amar Le Rav Shizvi Elameata, if that's true, the way you interpret the verse, that treifa is actually teach you that if you slaughter it, it will still convey tumah. So say the same thing by this verse. Dichsev, as the verse says, v'chaylev nevela, v'chaylev treifa. So hasanami nema. Say the same thing. Im treifa chaya harei nevela. It's superfluous. If the treifa is it will live out, so that when it dies, it's considered a nevela. Harei nevela amura. Im treifa eno chaya. If a treifa is not going to live out, so right now it's considered a nevela. Either literally right now or a piece of meat, if you take it off, will be considered a nevela. Harehu b'chlal nevela. So once again, it's same logic. Why does it teach me the same rule by the fats of a treifa? What's the case of a treifa? It must be it's the same as a nevela. No. The word treifa is here to teach me elalahavi treifa sheshachta. If you slaughter the treifa, what's going to happen? Shechal v'tahor. You should, according to your reasoning that you interpreted the other verse, you should interpret the same thing over here. And that would mean that when the Torah permits the fat of a treifa, it's referring to a treifa that's slaughtered. And the Torah is saying the treifa that's slaughtered, its fat will be permitted. Okay, so what's wrong with that? Michlal dehi mitam. But that sounds like the fats are permitted, but the actual animal is going to convey impurity. And that's not going to be true. How do I know? The Ham Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi said in the name of Rab, but Amri Labamas. These are Tana, and some say in the Tanakh Academy they taught, because it says like this. It says in the 11th chapter of Vayikra, V'chiyamus min behema. When a behema dies, when a domesticated animal dies, so asher, it says V'chiyamus min behema, asher hilachem la'achla, but hanogea benivlasa yitma ara. So when the animal dies, that animal that was fitting to eat, if you touch it, it will convey. It's now a nevela. It's going to convey impurity like a regular nevela. It's a regular nevela. However, how does it say it? V'chiyamus min habehema. That word min. If something dies from the animal, so what's from the animal? Miktas behema metama. Miktas eina metama. We're saying that only part of this animal will convey impurity. Part of the animal will not convey impurity. So what is that referring to? The ezu, zu treifa sheshachta. A treifa that's slaughtered will not convey impurity. And if it just dies and it becomes an avela, it will convey impurity.
Animal arbor.
This is a behema, it says. This is a behema.
It actually makes sense because most of the treifa aren't visible from the outside.
It's only after you slaughter it.
Only after you slaughter it. Otherwise, you spend a 50% meat.
Right. 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 So what happens now? So we use Rabbi Yehuda's exposition of the verse by Nevelu Treifa, which was his source, that an animal that's shechted will convey impurity. We tried to use that for the verse by chaylev, that the chaylev of a treifa which is slaughtered will not convey impurity, implying that the meat of the animal will convey impurity. However, we learned that that's not true. That the animal that's slaughtered we learned that the animal that's slaughtered is if it's found to be a treifa, it's not going to contaminate. It's not going to contaminate. So therefore, what is treifa? What is treifa going to be used for in the verse of chaylev nevela v'chaylev treifa? For the following. It's going to be used for ela treifa mi baile lemeute tmeya. The word treifa is going to be used to exclude a non-kosher animal. To teach you, mi sheyesh b'mina treifa, yatzdazu she'ein b'mina treifa. That the forbidden, the fats of the treifa that are going to be pure, it comes to exclude l'meute tmeya, fats of a non-kosher animal. That the fats of a non-kosher animal do not convey tumah.
Non-kosher species.
Non-kosher species. The fats of a non-kosher species do convey tumah. Sorry, they do convey tumah. These fats do not convey tumah, but the fats of a non-kosher animal do convey tumah. So now, okay, so this is the entire question on Rabbi Yehuda. What did I show you? I showed you in another area by permitted fats that the word treifa cannot be derived the way you wanted to derive treifa. Therefore, the same way treifa by so too treifa, the way you used it, cannot come to teach us that if you slaughter it, it will give off tumah. Now, just one second. Yeah, one second. Yeah. So therefore, treifa cannot be used the way you want to teach us that if you slaughter the animal, it will still convey tumah. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't have a source. Now, says the Gemara, okay, hachanami lemeute of tame she'ein b'mino treifa. Why don't you say the same thing, that the word treifa should come to exclude a non-kosher bird from conveying any impurity? The same way it excludes the non-kosher animal from it excludes the non-kosher animal and says that its fats are going to will convey tumah. Hachanami lemeute of tame she'ein b'mino treifa. Yeah. You should come to exclude a non-kosher bird. You should come to exclude a non-kosher bird from what? From conveying impurity. What? Yeah.
The category of treifa.
She'ein b'mino treifa, because it's not kosher. So there's no category of treifa. It only applies to a kosher bird. She'ein b'mino treifa of tameh. So the same way the word treifa was used by the animal, it should be used by the bird. Right? So to that, Rabbi Yehuda says, so Rabbi Yehuda, and he says, no. I know the word treifa is not extra. It's really going to be used to teach me that the bird is going to be impure when you slaughter it. Even though you did malik on it, it's still going to be impure. However, I learn out this halacha from the word nevela. The Rabbi Yehuda min nevela naftalei. Okay, so what did he learn out from the word nevela? Let's see. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yachol tehei nevelas of tameh, mitame begadim abesabliya. I could have thought that a non-kosher animal, when it becomes a carcass, a nevela, it would cause impurity. If I would eat it, I would become impure. My clothing would become impure. Talmud lomar nevela utrefa lo yochal. That you cannot eat a nevela or a trefa. And it says this, l'tamaba, the end of the verse says, it'll make you tameh. Okay, so it compares a nevela to a trefa. Misha isuro mishum bal kochal. It's only an animal, which one is going to cause impurity? Only the animal that you're prohibited from eating. So, Misha isur mishum bal kochal nevela. Only the animal which says you cannot eat the nevela. Yatza zeh she'eni isur mishum bal kochal nevela, ela mishum bal kochal tameh. A non-kosher animal does not have the prohibition of not eating a nevela. It has a prohibition of not eating non-kosher animals or non-kosher birds. So therefore, the only one that's going to cause impurity is the one that has a prohibition of you cannot eat a carcass. But this prohibition is that you cannot eat a non-kosher animal. So therefore, that's how I know that a non-kosher animal is not going to give off tumah. Yeah, it doesn't end. So the word, so I don't need the word trefa. So the word trefa is available for me to derive what I need. It's not available for me to exclude a non-kosher bird because that's already excluded from the word nevela. On that, the Gemara says, "Hainami tepaklei." So do the same thing now back to chelav. When we permitted the chelav of a nevela, the chelav nevela, you should say as follows: Misha isura mishum bal kochal chelav nevela, yatzdazu she'eni isur mishum bal kochal nevela. The same way earlier you used, you permitted the permitted fats of a nevela and a trefa. You ended up excluding the non-kosher animals that their chelav will cause impurity. Says the Gemara, why do you need that exposition? Use this exposition. That only the animal, mishum bal tochal chelav nevela, only the animal that the only prohibition is you can't eat it as a nevela, its fats will be permitted. Yatzdazu she'eni sur mishum bal tochal chelav nevela, ela mishum tameh. But this animal is already prohibited because it's not kosher, and therefore it would be excluded. It'll be excluded from the verse. You don't need the other exposition to teach you that. Okay. So if that's true, Elahai trefa, so then what do you need the word trefa in the verse of the permitted fats and the permitted trefa, fats of the trefa? If it's all learned out from a nevela to teach you that only something which is prohibited because it's a nevela, but if it was not a nevela, it would be permitted, which therefore excludes non-kosher animals, then what do you need the word trefa for? Elahai trefa mibayi lasuye chaya. It's coming to include the fats of a wild animal. Those fats will also be permitted. How do I know? What would I have thought? You would have thought that only something which its chelav is really prohibited, but its meat is permitted. But a wild animal, its fats and its meat are permitted. It doesn't become a nevela. Like a deer, exactly, like a deer. Kamash Malan, that we don't say that since the wild animal, its meat is permitted, therefore its fats, since its fats and its meat are the same, it should be excluded from the verse. Rather, we're going to say Kamash Malan that we're actually going to include the fats of a wild animal like a deer, and its fats, if it's found to be a trefa, its fat will be permitted. Okay, so Amar Lei says back, what's the difference between a non-kosher animal that its fats are no different than its meat? So first of all, the non-kosher animal, so why did you exclude those? Its meat and its fats are also not permitted because it's not kosher. So to the wild animal, its fats and its meat are also yes permitted. So they're the same. So how did you know to include that and exclude that? Who says? The ode, and furthermore, we're going to expound this later. Haksiv, the ochel lo yisoichluhu. It says, the verse tells you at the end of the pasuk, by the fats of an avela, that you cannot eat it. And the Gemara later is going to derive this to teach you, to teach you that we're going to learn from here that that the chelav of a wild animal, low tier, it's not going to be, it'll still remain impure. Its fats are still going to remain impure. So meaning the brisa later is going to expound the verse to teach you explicitly that the fats of a wild animal are going to cause impurity. So to teach me that the fats of a wild animal are going to be pure is going to be against an explicit brisa later, and that's not going to be plausible. Okay. So what does the word treifa teach us in this pasuk? Chelev nevela v'chelev treifa. El amar Abaye treifa legufa itzra. You need treifa for itself to teach you that its fats are going to be permitted. Why would you need that? Shalo tomar hol utmeya asura. Don't say hol utmeya asura mechayim, utreifa asura mechayim. A non-kosher animal when it's alive is prohibited, and a treifa when it's alive is going to be prohibited. So ma tmeya chalvatame, av treifa chalvatame. So just like a non-kosher animal, its fats are going to cause impurity. So too you would think that a treifa, its fats will cause impurity too. To that, the Torah teaches you that no, the fats of a treifa will be pure and not impure. Okay. Says the Mar, ihachi hainami mibayi, you need that. Ihachi, if this is true, so then when it says treifa by a bird, you should say, I need that verse for itself to teach you that that when it dies, it will contract impurity. And therefore treifa is not going to be available to Rabbi Yehuda to learn out that even if you do malika on it, it's going to be impure. I think. Just like a non-kosher bird is prohibited from eating, and the treifa surah b'achila, and so to a treifa, the fatal wounded animal, is also prohibited from eating. Ma'ov tame ena metame, just like a non-kosher bird does not impurify. Af treifa ena metama, so too if it has a fatal wound, it's also not going to cause impurity. That's what you would have thought. To which you need this to teach you that what? That really. Sorry, just like a non-kosher will not impurify. So you would have thought that if it dies, that you would have thought that even when it dies, it will not cause impurity. To which it says treifa to teach you that the bird that a bird that dies will cause impurity. The ode, and furthermore, how do you learn out a treifa of an animal, of the bird with a fatal wound, from non-kosher animal? They're very different. Tmeya lo haislo shasa kosher. A non-kosher animal from its inception was never kosher. Treifa haislo shasa kosher. A treifa had a moment in time where it was permitted before it became a treifa. The chitema, maybe you'll say treifa mi beta and Michael Lememar. Let's say it became a treifa in the womb, and therefore it's also invalid from its inception. Okay, but its species, b'mina mia ika, but it still has species of its kind that are going to be kosher, meaning the ones that don't have the fatal wound, as opposed to a non-kosher animal. So basically, we're back to the drawing board. What does this word treifa come to teach us?
And this whole discussion sounds like it belongs to Folio.
It's all here because of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, who said that the bird that you do malika on, it'll still remain a treifa. We wanted to find out what's the verse that he uses. And he expounded the word treifa, nevela utreifa, to teach you that it must be referring to an animal that's slaughtered and found to be a treifa. To that we attacked him, that we found in other places the word treifa, you cannot expand it to mean that. And if you can't expand it to mean it over there, you should not expound it to mean it over here either. And therefore, you have no source to teach you that an animal that's slaughtered and found to be a treifa should contaminate. To which we're trying to prove to you that no, we'll learn all the other laws from other places, and the word treifa will still be available to us. That's the puzzle. So, but the puzzle is almost done. So don't worry. So yeah, today I really needed a chart. I didn't make a chart through all this. I was thinking about it today, but I was rushed. I was too rushed. So where is it? Ela Marava. Ela Marava like this. Okay, so here comes, without getting into how this is going to work exactly, but we know basically there's a general principle that when you have one prohibition, so you cannot have another prohibition, go on top of it. So, for example, we just had, right? So in Kollel, you have an animal which is a nevela, right? You have a carcass. Now you cook it with meat and milk. So when you eat that animal now, which prohibition did you violate? The violation of nevela? For sure. Meat and milk? Rambam says no. Because ein isser chal isser. Once it already has a prohibition of a nevela, you can't put another prohibition on it. I believe Rashi says in a number of places, it has no place to go on. It's an interesting thing. Like if you would have spiritual glasses, you would see there would be a stamp on the animal that says prohibited, and you can't be doubly prohibited. However, there are many exceptions to the rule. If the second prohibition, yeah.
Like you're doing it while you're driving, you're still on Shabbos. The kids always add all these other, all these other experiments at the same time.
You're saying I should drive on Shabbos? No.
You can Isra.
Oh, Isra. So if the second prohibition is more expansive, so we're not going to get involved in that, but it'll enter your head like, oh, how does this work? So Toast is bothered by all these things. It'll work. Don't worry. So it always works. So by the way, I pressed the button last time. No, I pressed the button. It worked. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah. Well, she didn't hear you say it, but she intuited it. The Rava says the reason why it says in this verse the fats of the animal and the fats of the treifa are going to be permitted, but you cannot eat it. What's it coming to teach you? Yavo isser nevela v'yachol al isser chela. It's coming to teach you that nevela, if you have already forbidden fats, so yavo isser nevela v'yachol al isser chela. How do you have that? Chelav is already. You have two prohibitions. One prohibition for eating chelav, and the other prohibition for eating a nevela. Which one comes first? I guess the chelav was already there from the beginning. Okay, yeah, sorry, we're good. So you have a chelav which is prohibited, from the get go, and then the animal dies now. So we're going to say that nevela will go on top of chelav. Figure out how it's an exception to the rule, whatever it is. Fine. Nevela will go, and there'll be two prohibitions. Yavo isser treifa, v'yachal isser chelav. Similarly, if you have chelav, and now it's found to have a fatal wound, you're also going to have two prohibitions: a treifa and chelav.
The chelav would have been usher even if you shafted it properly, and it was a treifa.
How does the second prohibition come and land on top of it? What happened to Ain's colors? It's chelav now. It came first. Now you have nevela and treifa on top of it. Nevela or treifa.
Are you over on the treifa part for eating the chelav or for eating the part of the animal?
No, for the chelav. I think for sure the other part of the animal is a treifa. Now you don't need a verse to teach me that. That's obvious. That's regular treifa. But
in other words, but the verse, if it's isser kal isser, you're going to get double markup for eating this thing.
Yeah. Rashi says, don't say shelo tomar ein isser nevela v'treifa chalon al isser chelav. So I guess maybe it's an exception to the rule. I don't know. It could be an exception to the rule. The Torah here tells you, even though in general we hold ein isser chal isser, that one prohibition doesn't go on another prohibition, but here Rashi says the verse comes to tell you, don't tell me that when you eat the chelav you should not violate nevela or treifa. No, the verse is telling you you do violate nevela and chelav or treifa and chelav. Maybe it's an exception to the rule. It could be it's just simply it's an exception to the rule. It's an exception. Okay, good. It's the verse itself. Okay, good. It's an exception to the rule. Fine. Now, v'tzrichi, I need both. Is to teach me diashmin and nevela mishum dematya. The metamya, sorry, a nevela causes impurity. So therefore, that I understand. It's more stringent. You'll violate that prohibition. About treifa emalo, but treifa doesn't cause impurity. Maybe not. V'yashmin and treifa mishum d'isura mechayim. A treifa can be prohibited even when it's alive. Once again, whatever that means. Yeah, either literally or if you take a piece off of it. Aval nevela is not as stringent. It's only prohibited once it's dead. Aval nevela emalo tzricha. At the end of the day, I need both of these, a nevela and a treifa in the verse to teach me that if you eat the chalev and it's a nevela, if you eat the chalev, the forbidden fat, when it's a treifa, you'll violate both prohibitions. Now, once again, this was all brought in because Rabbi Yehuda learned the pasuk in the 17th chapter of Vayikra, which said, "V'chol nefesh asher tochal nevela utreifa." Anybody who eats an nevela or a treifa will cause impurity. Rabbi Yehuda said that treifa is referring to an animal that's shechted. An animal that's shechted will cause impurity against Rav Meir. Yeah. It sounds like Rabbi Yehuda goes for anything, not just a bird. Even an animal, and even an animal that's shechted when it's a treifa will be impure. Is that fit with the Mishnah though? Maybe the Gemara is going to ask them. Right, that was Rav Meir's Kal V'chomer in the Mishnah. What does Rabbi Yehuda respond to that? He doesn't respond. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah. Rashi says on the Mishnah. Okay. Rashi is on the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda argues under Rav Meir not just by malika on a treifa, but he argues in general by a treifa. Any animal or bird that is slaughtered or malika, or you do malika on. So both of those Rabbi Yehuda argues on that at the end of the day, it will give off impurity, not like Rav Meir. Rav Meir says no. How does Rabbi Yehuda know that? Because of the verse, it says nevela or treifa will give off impurity. Treifa, Rabbi Yehuda says, is totally extra. It's coming to teach you a unique case of a treifa that gives off impurity. That is a treifa that is slaughtered. If it's found to be a treifa, that will give off impurity. Don't say that the kosher slaughtering removes it from its status. So too, by malika, if you do malika on a sacrificial bird that's found to be a treifa, don't say that it's malika removes it from the status of a nevela like Rav Meir, and therefore if you put it onto the altar, you can leave it on. No, it's going to remain impure. And therefore if you put it on the altar, you got to take it off. Okay. So that's all. That ends Rabbi Yehuda's journey about this word treifa. Now, Rabbi Meir, what does he do with treifa? Rabbi Yehuda's right. It's superfluous. Rabbi Meir needs something. It needs to teach you something. So, we have time. Okay. Watch this. Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Meir, how you treifa mahi avidle? What did it teach me? Rabbi Meir said it's coming to exclude lemute shchita shehi lifnim. The word treifa is coming to exclude shchita shehi lifnim. If you slaughter a bird inside the courtyard, that's not going to convey impurity. Yeah. Shchita on any animal?
What does he mean? Not a bird. No, it's just bird.
Bird. Shchita, it's coming. I think the word's not how you know. Yeah. Yeah, it's from the Gemara earlier on 69a. Yeah, meaning just like a treifa is always the same inside and outside, the bird is going to be different. So if you slaughter the bird, not a sacrificial bird, a regular bird. No, you're slaughtering a regular bird. Yeah. A regular bird, you're slaughtering it, and it's not going to convey impurity, right? Right. Treifa is coming to exclude this bird, and if it's slaughtered inside the courtyard, it will not convey impurity, right? Correct. I've Rabbi Yehuda. Is that trefa achwina ksiv? I agree with you on that law, but I learned that from a different word. Trefa on the 22nd chapter of Vayikra. Fine. I Reb Meir. What do you do with the other word trefa? Chad lemute shchita shehi lefnim, v'chad lemute of tameh. One comes to exclude slaughtering the bird inside the courtyard, and one comes to exclude lemuute of tameh, the slaughtering of a non-kosher bird. That's also not going to emit tumah. That will not be tameh. Not kosher, and if you slaughter it, it's not going to be tameh. Okay. Right, it's not going to contaminate you. If you eat it, it will not contaminate you and your clothing. In ostrich. Okay. So slaughtering only by a sacrificial bird. But by an unsacrificial bird, like an ostrich that you found in the zoo, you petting, and then you brought your sheath knife, and the petting turned into a disaster and hit front page of the news. So when the rabbi comes to tell you what you do, you tell him, by the way, you should know, I'm not impure. I'll go to jail, but I'm not impure. Yeah, smart guy. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, he agrees to these halachas. How does he know the rule? Minevela nafkale. He learns it out from the word nevela. That there's an extra pasuk telling you that a nevela you shouldn't eat. That's unnecessary. Rashi explains it's coming to teach you that only a nevela, only if you have a prohibition of nevela, will it cause impurity. But the non-kosher bird, you're already prohibited because it's not kosher. That will not, that will not cause impurity if it's shechted. Okay. I Reb Meir, what do you do? Classic Gemara, yeah. I Reb Meir, what do you do with the extra nevela you shouldn't eat? Hi nevela my avidle. It's coming to teach you that you've only violated the prohibition if l'shiur achila b'kezayis. If you ate a kezayis. Says the Gemara, isn't that obvious? The verse that tells you should not eat a nevela says you should not eat a nevela. And eating in the Torah is defined by, in Olive's word, by a kezayis. I believe it's halacha Moshe Messinai, the shurim, the measurements are halacha Moshe Messinai, I believe. So I think Rashi explains that in different places. So either way, we already know that. So the other pasuk of nevela can't come and teach you a kezayis, because the original source of not eating a nevela already teaches you a kezayis that's prohibited. How do I know? It says you cannot eat, and cannot eating means a kezayis. So says the Gemara, okay. Chad l'shur achila b'kezayis. You're right. One tells you cannot eat a nevela, and eating means a kezayis. But the other verse teaches you v'chad l'shur achila b'chedei achilas pras. The other rule when it comes to eating is that it has to be in a certain amount of time. A pras, I believe, a half a loaf. Everyone knows that it's a misnomer. It's a big misnomer. Everyone knows that by Pesach, you have to eat your matzah very fast, 2 to 9 minutes. Where does that come from? Because if not, it's not considered eating in the Torah's definition. It's like 2 separate eatings now. So if you have to have a kezayis of matzah, but you split it up, half a kezayis now and half a kezayis an hour later, we don't view that as one kezayis. We view it as 2 kezayis. But that's true for any kind of eating. So when you have your challah on Shabbat, you should eat whatever. It's not only one piece of challah, but you should not linger on that piece for a half hour. You should eat your requisite amount. All eating is going to be b'chtei achilas pras. Now, what's the problem? If all eating is defined by this amount it takes to eat a half a loaf, so what do you need the extra pasuk of do not eat a nevela to teach me that? Isn't that already included in regular do not eating? Says the Gemara, you're right. However, you would have thought, you would have thought that it's a novelty, that by a bird, that what's a novelty over here? That we never found such a thing. That it's not impure if you touch it, but if you eat it, it is impure. That only exists by the bird. So that's a novelty. So when you would have thought like this, once it breaks the rules in terms of regular impurity laws, everything else, you touch it, it's impure. Inside, if you eat it, you'll be impure. But here, if you touch it, you're not impure, but if you eat it, you are impure. So you'd have thought that since it's a novelty, then maybe even if you ate it in a longer period of time, even more than 2 to 9 minutes, let's say it takes you 40 minutes to eat it, it would still cause impurity. Kamash Malan, that the second verse of not eating an avela, the one that's superfluous, comes to teach you that no, it's still limited by the rules of eating, and you have only if you eat it between whatever 2 and 9 minutes, let's say 4 minutes, only then will you become impure. But if you split it up, then you will not become impure. It's interesting that the Gemara did not entertain that because it's a novelty, maybe less than a kazayas, it should be a problem too. I mean, there's 2 definitions of eating: a kazayas and the amount of time, the measurement and the amount of time. The Gemara just picked on one of them. It said since it's a novelty, you would have thought you had much more time and still violate the prohibition, but it didn't pick on the actual minimal measurement. I mean, you would have thought maybe it's such a novelty that even a tiny bit of a kazayas, you should be over the prohibition.
But I wouldn't have thought just because one halacha is different, that means then now everything is different. I mean, why not? The Torah says this one thing is different.
What am I going to say?
That's what the Gemara tells you. They're not like that.
Right. I guess the point is like this. The point is that when you have something unique as this bird, so then you're left with a question: how far is its uniqueness going to go? The whole category now is a separate category. You have regular tuma, and then all of a sudden you single this guy out, the bird out, into his own category. Now you're wondering: is do not eating by that unique case the same as a regular case or not?
I'm allowed to cook on Yantas, but not on Shabbat. It doesn't mean I can do anything in the world. Whatever it says.
Right. Okay, fine. So that's that. Rabbi Yehuda, after all the dust settles, they have a fundamental debate. If you slaughter an animal or do malik on a bird, and you found it to have a fatal wound, is that bird or animal going to convey tumah? Rabbi Meir says yes. He has a kal v'chomer, and Rabbi Yehuda has a verse that says no, the extra word treifa. Okay. Tana Rabban says the Brisa v'chelev nevela v'chelev treifa. So back to our fats. Yeah. So the fat of a nevela and the fat of a treifa are not going to convey impurity, but there's a prohibition of eating them. Chelev v'chelev nevela v'chelev treifa. Says the Gemara, b'chelev behema tahora hakasum medaber. Okay, let's make an assumption. The Torah is talking about a kosher animal. We're talking about the fats of a kosher animal. Says the Gemara, where'd that come from, that assumption? That's what you said. You said it's not a kosher animal. Maybe it's the fats of a non-kosher animal that are going to be permitted. How do you know? It says the fats of an avela, the fats of a treifa. What's it referring to? Kosher animal or not kosher animal? So, if you go with the first way, which is I'm a kosher animal, what's going to come out? Amris tiher michlal shchuta, v'tiher michlal chelev. Just like an animal, once you shecht it, it's going to be now able to eat. V'tiher michlal chelev. So too, it's going to be purified from its fat. Makishetir michlal shchuta v'tehora. The only time that shechting allows you to eat it is when it's a kosher animal, below b'tmeya. So too, when it's purified now, when it's no longer going to be impure, that should also refer to afkishetir michlal chelev b'tehora. So too, this animal fat that should be permitted should be, I think, by a kosher animal below b'tmeya, and not by a non-kosher animal. Okay, that's one way. O klach l'derech zu, or go down the other path. Tiher michlal nevela, v'tiher michlal chela. Just like the fats are permitted, even though nevela is prohibited, and the fats are permitted even though usually. One sec. Tiher. O klach l'derech zu. Tiher michlal nevela. It's going to be permitted from a nevela, meaning now the fats are permitted. V'tiher michlal chelev. And it's going to be, and its chelev is going to be permitted. Let's see what it says. 1 second, okay. Makishetir mechlal nevela, v'tmeya v'lo b'tehora. Just like the fats are permitted from a nevela, it's saying what a nevela is not kosher. That's what it means.
The whole thing is from the getting rid of the bag. Good to look at the non-kosher.
When did it purify? Nevela, that was by non-kosher species. Meaning the non-kosher species is not going to convey tumah. V'lo b'tehora, but not by kosher species. So too, meaning just like non-kosher species. We'll see what it's referring to. It's going to be referring to a bird. But just like there is a non-kosher species which, when it dies, is not going to convey tumah. So too, the chaylev here, it's permitted, it should be referring to a non-kosher animal. Okay, so now, Amris, Kishibaba derech zu. Okay, so now you have two ways to go. What's going to be the difference? Kishibaba derech zu hi b'tehora. If you go down the first route, it's going to be talking about a kosher animal, and the fats of a kosher animal are going to be permitted. Kishibaba derech zu hi b'tmeya. If you go down the second path, the second option, it's going to be referring to a non-kosher animal, and its fats will be permitted. So either way you go, so you have a big difference which way you go. If it's referring to a kosher animal, then the fats are going to be permitted. A non-kosher animal, then its fats are going to be permitted. Talmud lomar treifa. Says the Torah treifa. What is treifa used for? Mi sheyesh b'mina treifa. Only something that has in its category a treifa, which only going to refer to kosher species. Otzi es hatemeya she'ein b'mina treifa. We're going to exclude the non-kosher animals that don't have in their species treifas. V'lo what? V'lo otzi es hachaya she'yesh b'mina treifa. But we're not going to exclude a wild animal which has in its category a treifa. Maybe we'll start with this.
I was waiting for that, because that's the answer.
What?
That's the chaylev that's listed.
Of what? Of a?
Of an animal. Of a chaya.
Not a behemoth?
Right.
Wild animal.
The chaya of the chaylev of the domestic animal is us.
Below it is a chaya she's b'mina treifa. Talmud lomer v'achol lo sokluhu, says the verse, you should not eat it. Misha chalva asura u'b'sara mutter. Only something which chaylev is prohibited and its meat is permitted. Yatsa chaya, a wild animal, is excluded. Shechalva u'b'sara is mutter. Yeah, what's happening? We don't know yet that's referring to a chaya or a behemoth, no?
No.